I'm talking with the anti-littering committee, the anti-littering uh, beautification. I think it's properly the beautification committee. So we have some members represented from there this morning. We're just waiting, I think, Mr. Sims from DEH to come on, as well as Miss Theresa. I don't know. Let me double check. Is Miss Heather joining us as well? Theresa, or is it just you and Mr. Sims? I can't hear you. Hold on. Let me just bring you on stage. Good morning, madam.
Hi, morning.
How are
Can
you?
you hear me now? I'm good. I don't think so. I think it's just Richard and I this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that being the case, we're going to get started with you. I did get a message that he's stuck in a little bit of traffic, so
Mm-hmm.
he'll be joining us shortly. But I know you can hold your own, honey child.
And haven't see my kids have had to introduce me to become more tech savvy.
Oh, I love it. You're doing it from your
So
phone today.
yeah, don't have a choice.
Yes.
So there you go.
Very
So
good. And you look good. Uh,
well, I
yeah,
can't. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So Miss Theresa, you're part of this beautification task force. And tell us, we spoke to you some months ago. What has the task force been up to as of late?
Right. So I want to cram in as much information as I can.
Yes.
Haven't I'm not going to go into a deep dive with the history of this, right? Because we know
Mhm,
Heather's role in bringing this about, and we know the minister's transformation in making it into a task force.
mhm,
So what we've been doing primarily is trying to meet with all of the stakeholders to try and see if we can get them engaged. So
mhm,
for example, we met with the commissioner of police, I want to say about 2 months ago, and we had a really interesting conversation with him, because the view that folks tend to hold is that the
mhm,
commissioner is either unaware, or if he is not motivated to engage in this discussion.
mhm,
And he just wiped that concept away completely when we started to have the conversation. He's very much aware of what's going on, but one of the central concerns that he has, obviously, is when you're asking the police to get involved with something like this, that takes their energies away from doing other things, like,
absolutely.
exactly. So we have to prioritize, how we're going to engage the police.
Mhm,
Made a number of useful recommendations about what we can do. And in fact, I was just taking a quick look at the notes that I made coming out from the discussions that we had with him, because quite a number of the practices that he is suggesting, these are things that we don't even do on island. So, for example, we want to change the whole idea and the values around litter. The view that many people come in with is that, Caymanians don't litter, which is not true. Uh, we have to start, charity starts at home. We
mhm,
have been guilty of that ourselves. But that's more in the recent generation that you will see, because, some of the commentary that we received from people was that if you look at the older Caymanian community, we were really, really, really very have the view that, charity, cleanliness is next to godliness.
mhm,
And certainly that's the way I grew up. And so much so that when, you would invite strangers to your home, you would always take
mhm,
whatever china that you had that was clean and give it to the stranger, rather than use it for yourselves.
mhm,
So we have had a history of always wanting to convey how we view our history, our culture, and so on. And cleanliness has certainly been one of those. In recent years, with people having different values, different cultural experiences, and so on, when we engage them in our community, we find that there's an increase with the litter. There's that,
mhm,
obviously, the increase with construction, and people, and just people just don't consider the importance of, when you throw trash around,
mhm,
how it actually impacts the environment, how it impacts the economy, and some
mhm.
of those things that are adjacent to issues like that. So those are not necessarily things that come to mind. We even have people calling us and complaining about when they see people standing by the road urinating, and that is not something that would be a part of the Caymanian culture.
Mhm,
So putting that whole thing into context, what we want to do
mhm,
is to change mindsets,
Yeah.
change values, change the
And do we know, can I just ask you, because I mean, it's so interesting that you bring up culture because obviously we've been kind of hyper focused a little bit this week on culture, right? I'm curious to know what has shifted in our culture that means we don't even care about our environment anymore. Like we can just throw garbage down. Somebody just sent me a picture off of Smith Road, and I'm so disgusted when I see photos like this to actually think that this is our beautiful island because this is certainly not the Cayman that most of us know, and yet it is the Cayman that's out there. Look at this. Look
yeah.
at the amount of plastic and litter and garbage pails and who's doing this? Who does not care that they're using these sites as just dumping grounds to dispose of their garbage and to just throw stuff down? What has happened
So,
to the culture of cleanliness is next to godliness? Where has that gone?
so there are a couple of elements, when you try to take the onion approach where you peel off
Mhm,
the layers. Poverty is also one of those things because people cannot, many people that we are engaged with and that we observe, they really cannot afford to have proper dumping. The other thing is the time that it takes to collect your thoughts. I mean, most people are really only thinking about making an honest day's work in wage,
mhm,
being able to put food on the table and so on. So the priorities that in general that we have are a little different. The other
mm,
thing is that the people, many people who are now working among us, they don't have the same values that we have
mhm,
when it comes to that sort of thing. And you will
mhm,
see them either throwing stuff out of the window. And I mean, it incensed the minister so much on one occasion that he pulled his car off the road,
mm,
immediately called the police, took a picture of what was transpiring, and
mhm,
ensured that this was that he was so incensed. And people don't care,
mm,
Sam. So if you're not a part, if you don't see
mhm,
yourself as being a part of or included in this community, the
mhm,
values that you have are not quite the same as you would have for your own
mhm.
community. So there are a number
Well,
of
maybe
issues that
they don't care in their own country either, because I've been to some countries, and one of it strikes me as so interesting because one of the things that I always look at when I go to a country is the cleanliness of the streets and the environment. So whether I'm in New York, Jamaica, Honduras, whatever, I take a look around and I see is there sitting garbage everywhere because that's going to tell me a lot about that particular environment that I'm in. So I mean, I think that we also have to admit that maybe where they're coming from, they also don't care in their own countries. So that attitude is very, very easy to transfer here.
So I'm usually cautious when I go down that road only because I tend to see that type of behavior as something that is stemming from a sense of poverty, a sense
Mm,
of not having real opportunities to uplift yourself financially and pursue
mhm,
goals that make you feel that you have value. Because
mhm,
if you as an individual don't have value for yourself, it's kind of like difficult when you're struggling to meet
mhm,
requirements, for you to even focus on. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but I'm saying that that is something I usually take into consideration. But
mhm,
and I'll continue to underscore the idea is to try to change values, which is why, I say to my team, you know, when we've had this litter law in place since 1982, Sandra. The first time it was invoked was about a
mhm.
month ago when we ensured that the
Wow.
DEH had officers that were trained and they brought a matter to the courts successfully. Granted, the individual was only charged $200, a
Mm,
$200 fine, which, as we know, is bubblegum. And in fact,
exactly.
one of the reasons why people are saying, look, this $500 fine, don't even
Mhm,
bother with it because people will come and very often pay the fine and
mhm.
continue the same bad
Yes,
behavior.
it's certainly not it's not
Deterrent.
a deterrent. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and in fact, even and again, I'm just going to try to go through things as I think of them when you raise the thought. Even when we're trying to ensure that everybody will be aware once they set ground on terra firma in Cayman and they see they're going through immigration, they're going to have signs all over our airport showing them that littering is against the law and the fines. So that's going to be, so when people go to the courts, for example, and start to say, well, we didn't know and we can't read and write, which is an excuse really, because we're not really importing people to do jobs here, and folks that don't have literacy that is necessary to get the job done. But they're going to know right from the get-go that it's a fine, and it's something that's taken very seriously by this community. And, you know, we're going to try to attach all of the ramifications that come with a breach of that to various different laws. For example, the immigration law, for example, your work permit. All of those things are going to be attached to this whole idea of littering. If you come here, bring in a car, and you dispense with the car along the side of the way with a government property, on government property, we will, what we're trying to do, and this is coming out of one of the recommendations that the Commissioner of Police made, we're going to try to ensure that we have officers who can actually go and and I'll just say this also, because when we tag the vehicles, some of times that's not a deterrent. So what we're now going to do is just simply remove the vehicle without even giving persons notification that we're removing it. And then they're going to have to go to the government property or the various department to try and get the particular vehicle back. So,
but a lot of them are discarding these vehicles because they're done with them, so they're not going to be back for it.
and that is also a part of the problem. We recognize that people are bringing in vehicles that are not only cheap, but they're only bringing them in just to get the parts. Because we've now had decades of bringing in cheap vehicle, bringing in cheap labor. I mean, because that's what they can afford. And then we're actually paying the price. We as a community paying the price because, you know, we don't have direct taxation. It comes to every one of us, whether we earn $6 per hour or whether we earn millions per hour. You know, so we're now trying to look at that to ensure that there's a level playing field where that's concerned. We've even spoken to the commissioner about ensuring that one of his officers is going to be specifically identified and going and working with the BTF to ensure this is something that is done on a regular basis. And we will also try to get a couple members of the BTF deputized by the Commissioner of Police, because this is the whole idea of police and garbage. This has to be a community effort. This can't be by one person, two person, a committee, or the police. Every single person have to be engaged. Everybody. And it seems as though the message is actually reverberating, because I get so many emails and so many notes on Facebook about people wanting to engage and to try to do something about it. So it's going to be more of a holistic approach, Sandra, and many people can be a little upset because, for example, in as much as the minister intends to increase the fines, and to be reasonable, because if somebody that's littering a can of Coke, it's not the same as somebody who's littering huge dilapidated vehicles and so on. So we're going to look carefully at the fine to make sure that it meets the breach. So there's that one element. The other thing that we want to ensure is that even when we have a financial penalty, it's not going to stop there, Sandra, because what we tend to find is that people will, like I said, pay for the financial penalty, but they don't do anything about the breach. So we're going to attach breach, for example, and compensation to something that the particular person needs the most. So if you have a business and you're continuing to be in breach of the law, that license could be affected. We may be, I mean, I haven't spoken to the minister about this, but this is coming in from a number of conversations that people have had with me when they come in and they complain and they say, look, Mrs. Pitcairn, we want to help. We want to do something about it. We've notified our people about it. We've engaged the police in doing something about it. And this particular person does nothing and continues to do that. And what it can do, it can reduce the value of your particular property, especially if you see these ad hoc garages going all over the place. So what we are going to do is really take a deep dive and look into the sort of breaches that we see happening and the penalties that will arise, and how best to ensure that the person in breach feels that pain. Because
Mhm.
unless we feel that and understand that we're serious about this, people are
Yes.
going to be willing to get engaged, and we
Mhm.
will be back to the same old, same old, same. I told
Yes.
Mr. when he
And
asked, go on.
yeah, I want to say too that the other thing in terms of changing the mindset, Teresa, which I'm sure you guys appreciate, is education. And that's why you're here, to educate the general public, but also educate our children.
Oh yeah,
You know, I see children who grew
yeah.
up around nothing but clutter and junk, both inside and outside of their homes and their yards. And so they're being acclimated to that type of environment where they don't see anything wrong with that. They don't see anything wrong with throwing stuff down on the floor. You know, sometimes I share with people, my daughter, she's only 7 years old, and we're walking outside and she's like, Mommy, why are people harming the earth? Why is there all this garbage on the ground? Like if she sees a piece of plastic, she runs to go pick it up. Although I have to sometimes tell her, you know, for her own safety, she has to be careful what she's picking up because there's a proper way to pick up things that are discarded, right? But you know, that's like her thinking and that's been ingrained in her. And I hate to say it, but I probably haven't done the best job of ingraining that in her. But I reinforce that it was actually ingrained in the schools that she's gone to. They've talked about the environment. They've talked about the necessity to not throw down garbage, to pick up after yourself, to put things in the proper place. You know, so when she sees plastic or cans or whatever outside, she's actually bothered by that. And I think that our schools also need to get on board and make sure that as part of the curriculum from year one, kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, wherever we're starting our kids at, that that is a fundamental part of the message that we're getting across to our children, that we get one earth, we have one environment, and we have to do our best to try to keep it as clean as we possibly can.
Same page, Sandy. What when we started and we looked at the idea of getting um, people motivated and engaged and changing the laws and stuff, it was such a huge chunk to chew. We ended up actually having to divide the committee into 5 separate areas.
Mm,
One of them was education. So we have a team of people, and mind you, all this, we prepared a paper, a very, very comprehensive paper to the minister. We gave it to them in June last year for cabinet to review. So in the education, we have the role that the PTA will play, the role that parents will play, teachers will play, the Ministry of Education, the role that it will play as well. More recently, when we were having some of the conversations, one of the team members said to us that, you know, we hear of we hear of kids telling teachers that, you know, they're not responsible for picking up any litter, and that the helpers that are in the school are responsible for picking up the litter. So, you know, I said, well, you know, you can appreciate where that narrative is coming from, but that is the sort of thing we need to change. I'm not, I don't like pointing fingers necessarily, because, you know, people take it personally. And when people take things personally, you rarely get a lot of things done. So we thought of different ways in which we can get that message through, and
mhm,
also be sensitive to the fact that we have children raising
mhm,
children raising children. And many of the times, the values that
mhm,
they will need even as adults, they
mhm,
have, because children raising children raising children. So when we took that deep dive, we didn't just look
mhm,
at surface issues. We want to get to the root of the problem, and that's primarily poverty. You know, and I mean, you will probably have heard me. I know many people were a little disenchanted with some of the things that I said recently about the
mhm,
role that big business need to play as well, because, you know,
mhm.
you can't run a business and think that you're going to keep the mothers in your business, knowing that the
Mhm,
mothers have families as well. And so
mhm,
there's a whole wide issue that and I know this is a small bit, but as I said to the minister when he invited me to do this, it
mhm,
also has to be about revolutionary thinking, about
mhm,
how Caymanians value themselves.
mhm,
Because people are always saying to us, we are unassertive, calling
mhm,
stupid and
mhm.
stupid and dumbing us down day in, day out. I mean, when you
Yeah,
listen to the narrative about our leadership, you
yeah.
don't need to go any further than that to
Mhm,
see
mhm,
how people see us. And I would like us to use litter, as small as and simple as people may consider that to be, as a starting place to have the kind of conversation that we need to have about self-love, about community love, about, you know, how we value ourselves, because how we value ourselves will also translate into the narrative that we have about ourselves.
My dear, those are some powerful words this morning. And you know what is so crazy about it is it applies to so many areas of our lives. We do have Mr. Richard Sims, who's been patiently waiting in the back studio. So we're going to bring Mr. Sims in this morning. He is the director of Department of Environmental Health. So they're the ones who are responsible for your garbage collection and pickup, and to some extent, you know, they're part of the solution of trying to keep our environment as clean as possible. So, Mr. Richard, are you with us? I see your microphone is still off. Let me know if you're ready. If not, we can certainly continue the conversation. We've got quite a number of comments that are coming in as well. I don't think he's quite ready. So let's give him a minute to get himself sorted. But let's go through some of your comments. So we have Leanna saying that we need more cycling facilities, glass makers, reuse of plastic containers, make art or home decor of these things. So I suppose that's one element of it. And, you know, I always think, and this is something that I struggle with, it's not what you do with the stuff at the end, the life end of it, right? It's the fact that maybe you don't need it to begin with. And so we need to start re-examining how many things we're purchasing and what containers we're purchasing them in. And do we need to purchase all of these plastic containers that will end up somewhere in the environment? Because even if it's not on our little island, it is being exported overseas. It's being placed in a dump or a facility somewhere that it's literally going to take millions and millions of years for it to be able to disintegrate into nothing. And so, you know, don't just think about your immediate environment, which will be our focus here today, obviously, but beyond that, where do the goods that you purchase and that you discard actually end up? Recycling, repurposing, donating stuff. So they often say that what's one man's, you know, trash is another man's treasure. So that's why I'm all about, you know, I try to keep my stuff in good condition, shoes, clothing, whatever, so that when I'm done with it, that doesn't mean that it's the life cycle of that item. It's still in fantastic condition. And I can then donate to that to people in need. And somebody else can get years worth of use out of those items as well. So thank you, Leanna, for always thinking about how we can repurpose a lot of the consumer goods that we do utilize. So Leanna also says, plus the fine needs to increase to $500,000. That would be, whoo, that might be putting it a little bit too high. Like, well, I mean, if supporting our, you know, if we're supporting the thought process, then I totally get it. But you can't put it too high where it's not going to ever be enforced. And Theresa, I'm shocked to hear, and I want to ask Mr. Richard about this, but I am shocked to hear that we've had legislation in the book all of these years, and we've never had anybody taken to court for it. I think that demonstrates how we and how the government and the police are not really serious about this issue. When did you say the legislation went into place?
So we've had it since 1982, and it went through some iterations in the 1990s. But if we
that's how many years?
Yes, centuries ago, I call it. So if we take what the judge said in his judgment,
41 years.
He said that this is the first matter that he as a magistrate to deal with this. And kudos to Richard, and I'm hoping that he gets situated really quick, because I don't want to continue.
Richard, something is going on with your camera there. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay, Richard, right over to you. And I would only touch on cost that Leanna made. One of the reasons why you will see that these fines are going to be significant is because it's going to cost the government to get that particular matter to the courts. So you're paying the court staff, you're paying the DEA staff, you're paying so the cost that we get as a consequence from enforcement should be able to pay for the cost it is to bring the matters to the courts. Richard, morning, welcome, and I'm going to just leave you right there. Run with it.
Yes, good morning, sir. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And my apologies for being a little tardy this
Yeah,
morning.
that's quite all right. So
Try-
41 years legislation was on the books, and we've only had our first ever conviction. They only got a fine of what, $200, but and I guess in
Mhm.
order to clean it up, was that part of the mandate as well?
Well, the thing is, over the years, there's been challenges with prosecution,
Mm-hmm.
because, and some of that too is the way how the legislation is written too, because when you're first dealing with litter, you have to give an abatement notice, so you have to sort of, which is sort of like a warning to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you have to clean up the area and stuff like that, and so 90% of the time you'd find that whenever we have to get involved where abatement notices have to be served, people
Mm-hmm.
comply because they understand that if you don't, then there'll be repercussions of prosecution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So hence the reason that is some of the reasons. Plus, previously, there were staff who weren't really trained per se in how to deal with the full on investigations. How to take it on from beginning to
Mm-hmm.
end and take it through the court systems. So in preparation for that, I you know engage the services of the DPP office to
Mm-hmm.
assist us in training the staff in how to do case file preparations, interviewing suspects, and all these different things. And so, as a result of that, um, we were able to put persons before the court. Yes, for the first time. um, you
41
know,
years. Wow. I mean, it's
yeah,
it's shocking.
yeah, but
But
It's a first, so hopefully
yeah,
more to
but
come.
when you think about things like that, where you have to resort to prosecuting somebody for keeping their own
Mm-hmm.
space tidy. You know what I mean? It's really disheartening because that is something that should come naturally to us. I mean, I know Miss Teresa mentioned it earlier. When we were kids, I can guarantee you every Saturday morning that was our task to sweep up the yard and
Mm-hmm.
make sure everything looks tidy around the place. But nowadays, it seems like we have a lot of don't care attitudes, and if we
Mm-hmm.
go and I find challenges with my staff, they would go and talk to people to say, hey, listen, you have to clean up this space, and it's sort of like an argument as to why
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to do that or can't do it, especially when it comes to getting rid of derelict vehicles and stuff like that. People
Mm-hmm.
we understand people want to hold on to their antique. But if your antique is not looking good and it's making the neighborhood look bad, and it's been kept in such a way
Mm-hmm.
that you run down the neighborhood, then it's not no
Yeah.
longer an antique; it's a
Yeah,
nuisance,
it's
right?
just trash. I mean,
Yeah.
rodents
maybe,
as well. Yeah,
maybe people need to. Sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
do I said, and also a home for rodents. By the way, Sandra, people are
Yes.
saying that they're trying to get call. I don't know if this is gonna. Yeah,
936. I haven't seen any calls come in yet, but 936-2626 is the telephone number. So
okay, thanks
yeah, I
for that.
haven't seen any rings yet. But yes, I mean, you know, more education has to happen because it can't be that
Yeah,
people think you can have a vehicle, standing water, all these things, and that is not just bad for the environment, but that's actually bad for the health and wellness of the community.
Yeah.
Good
absolutely. Yeah.
morning,
Hello.
caller. Yes, morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm glad you have Mr. Sims on the radio. I am having an issue with a derelict vehicle parked on my business property. The
Mm-hmm.
last 4 weeks, ma'am.
Mm.
I have called the police station. When I called the police, they tracked the license plate. The police informed me that the vehicle had been sold. The lady told him the vehicle had been sold. I called DEH yesterday because I was told that normally they would tag vehicles.
Mm.
And the lady on the line told me, well, I would have to come to DEH to fill out a form and pay $75. Well, it's not a matter of $75. It is a matter of the principle of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, when I import a car, I have a car registered in my name. It is my
Mm-hmm.
corporate responsibility if I have sold the vehicle for me to transfer the license. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing. If I haven't, then
Mm-hmm.
I, as the owner, is ultimately responsible for that vehicle. In other words, if that vehicle that is parked on my property had committed, let's say, an offense, had killed someone, had committed,
Yep.
was involved in a robbery, the police would have found the owner. And I
Yeah.
am saying to them, please find the owner and tell them that they need to move the vehicle off of my property. It is obstructing my business. This is 3 weeks, ma'am. 3 weeks. And you know what they told me? You know what they said to me? That if it's on public property, that Department of Environment will move it for free. That's what I was told. Well, guess what? At one point in time, this is going to become public property, and DEH will have to come and move it because I am tired. I think I have been very patient now with the vehicle, and it has not been moved. And the other thing is, as far as I know, in the law, when I imported my car or anything, there's an environmental impact fee, which I assume takes into account for disposal. So why is the vehicle simply not? In other words, to me, increase then the environmental impact fee. Put it $500. So if eventually the vehicles is sold, then eventually somebody has to pay for it. Let's say DEH have to move it, but at least they would have recouped that money. Because I tell you, the average person cannot maybe afford $75 to move it for the vehicle to be disposed. It is not fair. It is not, honestly, and the police was sort of like not, I mean, they didn't pass on who the previous owner was, but they spoke to who the car was registered in, and they said the person said they had sold the vehicle, and that was it. That was all they told me.
What an
Right.
So thank you so much, caller. Let's see what Mr. Sims has to say. Thank you.
All right. A couple of points there that you raised, right? First, let me address the private versus public spaces. Right? When a vehicle is in a public space, right, and it is constitute a derelict, because what may be a derelict to you may not necessarily be a derelict to us, because we have to make sure that it's a derelict in accordance with what the law says a derelict is. Right? So, and in addition to that, for example, what you see as a derelict vehicle with missing wheels, windscreen, doors, that sort of stuff, obviously being taken apart, right? And in addition to that, the vehicle must be expired for more than 6 months. Okay,
that's what qualifies as a derelict vehicle.
Exactly. So if it's not, if a vehicle is not expired through registration for more than 6 months, then we really can't touch it, right?
What?
Yeah.
Maybe that legislation needs to change, because
those are
that
things
doesn't
that
make any sense, because now that explains why when people crash their vehicles, they just leave it there forever, and it would never be considered a derelict vehicle because the registration might be perfectly fine.
Okay, let me address that point that you just made in relation to accidents, right? Remember now, it's highly likely, 90% of the time, when a vehicle involved in an accident on the street, right? It is a licensed and well-insured vehicle. It's just that it got involved in an accident. No, that is not a matter for the Department of Environmental Health. That is a matter for the police to ensure that the owner remove those vehicles off the streets, right? Because remember now, the only difference, you're now saying it's a derelict because it involved an accident, it's been sitting outside the road. But then there are a lot of people who might be interested in that. The insurance companies, I can't just go and take those vehicles and then go crush it, and then it's a subject of an investigation that is ongoing, right?
Right.
So whereas there's a true derelict vehicle in a public space, I can assure that somebody tags it and moves it within 20 foot. It gives, what the tagging does, it gives the owner notice to remove the vehicle within 24 hours. Unless or else we will remove it for you. And if we will remove it for you, it means highly likely that we're going to take it to the landfill and destroy it, which then indemnifies me under the law for taking that action. All right. So you have to look at what is involved, how the vehicle is involved, for us to actually go and take action. Now, the lady mentioned that she had this vehicle in her parking lot, which is a private company's parking lot. It's not in a public space. So you as the owner of that property has the right to remove it. And hence the reason why when it comes to the Department of Environmental Health, we will say, well, yes, you can move it because it's well within your right to clear your property if the owner refuses to move it. So this is where we will then say, okay, you have to pay $75 and we'll come and remove it. All right. But if it's in a public space, that gives us all the authority to target and give it time. And when we remove it, and if we destroy it in that sense, then we are indemnified under the law. Right. Now,
so she can, just to clarify, Mr. Sims, what you just said, she can contact you all, and you're not going to give her runaround about, well, it's not your vehicle, you don't own it, blah, blah, blah. She can contact you and say, there's a derelict vehicle on my property, I want to have it removed.
Yes, and when she pays for it to remove, we'll remove it. Okay. Now, in terms of the environmental impact fee, right?
Stick a picture, Richard. Hold it. And that's a part of the problem. Yeah. Because we're now passing on that breach to someone else who's not responsible. And that's one of the things that we're actually looking into very seriously. Yes. And with respect to the whole insurance thing, we know that the courts have made a decision using something, with the example that the lady just used. A buys the car today and sells it to somebody tomorrow. B sells it to somebody the next day. C sends it to another person to D. So you have that continuum. And what the courts have said is that because this has gone on for such a long time, they're not necessarily willing to hold the last holder of the car responsible for any kind of cost that would arise, because it's impossible to get those costs from the original owner. Right. That's going to stop now because, and I'm not even sure what authorized the courts to do that. But, but anyways, it is something that we're definitely looking into and trying to ensure that forms part of the policy that we're looking into.
Because legislatively, you can change these things and not leave it up to the court's discretion. Yeah. To be able to say.
So Sandra, that's a lot of what we're hoping that cabinet will approve once the minister submits it and articulates the concerns and stuff. We will ensure that discretions are given not only to the courts, but also to the persons who are going to be actually, like I said, using the example of the constable, removing a vehicle from a public space without notification. And as Richard rightly said, they usually notify the and by the way, Richard, let me tell you, thank you publicly for the work that you have done. I know this is not an easy job, and I know even members of committee give you grief, but I want to say a public shout out and give you creds and thank you for the work that you've done. And I'll just let you go on. Yeah.
All right. So Peter has a suggestion that I'm thinking that you will not agree with. Peter says, tow the car onto the main road and leave it. That's exactly what we don't want people to do.
Then we'll have a flood of derelicts in the streets, right? But I just want to address the environmental impact fees that your caller mentioned earlier. That fee, right, that you pay, and I do support, and I've said before that maybe we can find some way of including the maybe an additional $75 that we charge for the towing of the vehicle when it needs to be taken from your home to a landfill, right? So that way you just pay one upfront cost, then you don't have to worry about it after that. But that fee that you actually pay is for processing the vehicle in the landfill when it's come to its end of the end of its useful life, right? So that is actually what that is for. It's not for coming to your residence or anywhere and collecting that vehicle and transporting it to the landfill.
Wow. All right, let's take in a few comments. It's quite shocking. All right, so Rusty says poverty and despair would make people not care about the environment around them. Someone else on WhatsApp says that they're not quite buying that story because Caymanians have been poor for a very, very long time, and we still had a lot of pride. So this person says Caymanians practice sustainable lifestyles before it was a buzzword. We reuse items. How do you think wampas were invented? We only took what we needed, but we wasn't dirty. So poverty does not equal nastiness. We have imported too many people who don't share our values, and the urinating on the public roadway is a prime example of that. And that's something that we talk about all the time here on the program, where people are now doing that. And it's astonishing how people seem to think that it's okay. Johan says we import too many people from all over the world that come from places where littering and nastiness is acceptable and a way of life. Plus, too many locals are lazy and assume government going to clean up after them. It's disgusting. Clean up after yourself. Romelia says, Sandy, I invited you out numerous times to show you this. You were just so busy. Yes, I am busy. But I have said I'm happy to go into neighborhoods, but Miss Romelia, I don't need to see it in Windsor Park because I see it all over the island. I take a drive out East End and I see it. Thankfully, my neighborhood isn't too bad, but we have a derelict home in this neighborhood where that person just doesn't want to clean up their yard. And right now we have, standing water that will sit there for days after the last rain in the middle of a dengue fever outbreak. So again, public health concerns come out of a lot of the lack of cleanliness that we see around the place. Zelfa says there's a truck filled with garbage by the plaza on Smith Road, adjacent to the HSA building. Can DH not do anything? A truck filled with garbage. Ms. Zelfa, maybe give us the exact location. You said it's adjacent to the HSA building. Is that Smith Road Plaza? Or is that, because HSA actually has more than one building now, but maybe just give us an exact location and that would be helpful. Miss Venice says cleanliness is next to godliness. I asked the question, where is godliness gone? Godliness is down the drain and so has cleanliness. Johan says, with derelict vehicles in neighborhoods all over Cayman be considered littering and subject to a significant fine. So I think Mr. Sims was just explaining the difficulty in particular when it comes to derelict vehicles. So there's an issue of tracking down the owner, and there's also obviously an issue with where the vehicle is located. Are those kind of the main concerns I'm hearing coming out of this situation, Mr. Sims?
Yeah, but I can tell you, as it relates to vehicles in neighborhoods, right? Because remember now, the streets within your neighborhoods are considered public streets, right?
Yes.
So if there are derelict vehicles on those streets, we'll certainly be addressing those and serving the appropriate notices. I can assure you, right, you will see some differences in the next coming weeks because I've just got 3 brand new grapple trucks that are in our possession right now, and they're currently being decaled and getting ready to be placed on the road. So as of next week, we will be going within the neighborhoods because there'll be one truck specifically assigned for this purpose, right? So we should be able to clean up the streets in the next couple of months, but started next week we'll be going into the neighborhoods to get this done. So if you don't want your vehicles to be removed, it's best you take it and put it into your yard, secure it properly. But if it's something that we consider to be a derelict under the law, then I can assure you that we will be taking action in having it removed.
Very good. So Johan, hopefully that answers your question. Leanna says, what happened to the junkyard that was behind Uncle Larry's on Eastern Avenue? Well, I'm happy to say, Leanna, this is where when Theresa talks about the responsibility of, private sector as well, that property was actually purchased by the DART organization and they cleaned it up very, very quickly. And I only remember this because at the time, I think somebody was renting that. It was like a garage or something, and someone was renting it, and DART had given that individual notice to vacate so that, they could dispose of all the derelict tires and everything else that was kept on that property. And there was some kind of discussion around it, like, who does DART think he is? Well, he's a person who obviously wants to keep the properties that he owns to some standard. People were actually upset about that. They were upset that he had given this company, whoever it was, notice. That was something that as you come out of the airport, you fly into our country, that's one of the first things you see if you're going out in the eastern districts is this, I think I got a mosquito in here, is this derelict site. Like, it was just such an eyesore. And look at it now, it is green grass, it's kept nice and clean, there's no debris there. And I thank that organization for making that move. So, it says a lot about us that we have a mindset that sometimes when people try to even clean up their yards or clean up neighborhoods, we're actually fighting them down and thinking that there's actually something wrong with that. Pretty crazy, if you ask me. So
Yeah,
lots of questions and comments coming in. Mhm.
So people can
yeah, another
actually
issue.
go to. I was just gonna say that just to tag on to a comment that you raised
Mhm.
earlier about this is a whole community effort. It's not
Yeah.
just isolated to different departments, government departments, and so on. If you see something, say something. We're good at
Yeah.
taking videos. We're good at taking pictures. We're good, and there's we can always submit all the queries that we have to DEH, and I'll leave that to Richard to let you know how we actually communicate with him to
Mhm.
make those complaints. Yes, see something, do something about it. Be,
Mhm.
although this is something that is on everybody's tongue, be the change that you want to see,
Yeah.
and start getting engaged and active and get this done. Because when we do it together, it's more likely that we will be a success.
Mhm.
Yeah, Richard, go on.
Absolutely. And I definitely encourage people to report or littering and illegal dumping as well as derelict
Mhm.
vehicles. You can either call us at 949-6696 or send an email to our dehcustomerservice.gov.ky, and
Mhm.
someone will definitely respond to you. But also in the same breath, we want to make sure people have the understanding that just if you actually see someone dumping something, we just be ready and prepared to give statements to say just
Mhm.
that, because we need that sort of evidence to take to the courts to have a successful prosecution, right?
Yes.
If you just giving us tip about an area, it's
Mhm.
hard to kind of go to the area and find the evidence of actually who did it. We can see that there is litter everywhere, yes, but then sometimes it's that fingerprint that we need. For example, we got lucky once, I believe, where we were able to find somebody with a mailing address name in the rubble, and we were able to put a file together for that.
Mhm.
But
Wonderful.
but there are those majority of times when we hear of littering and we go to the spot and all we find is just a rubble, and we're able to clean that up and leave it nicely. But we want to prosecute people for that sort of action, because that cannot be tolerated, right?
Yes, we do have a
So
caller in the line. On the line. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
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 Good morning.
Good morning, Theresa, and good morning to Mr. Sims, is it?
Yes, Richard.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I have to say, first and foremost, I am a little bit confused
Mhm.
as to the purpose of the beautification task force or committee or board or whatever it is. Please
Mhm.
forgive me for not knowing the proper name, that is. Upon the implementation of this, I remember calling in and asking a few questions, and that's been some time ago, because I had actually spoken to quite a few people years and years ago about a problem that I'm having in my community.
Mhm.
I know that the MP for Savannah came out, had a look, pictures were taken, and nothing has been done. Okay? It is private property.
Mhm.
So I don't know, like I said, whether this task force has been set up to be anti-littering. Is it to clean up the island? I don't care what community it's in. Or is it in an effort now to catch the recent people littering, find them, and so on?
Mhm.
Because especially the area I'm talking about, there I did hear the gentleman say something about what constitutes a derelict vehicle. So I'll ask, if it's there rotting for years and years and years,
Mhm.
would that not constitute it as derelict, whether it's on private property or not?
Well, you see, once a vehicle is creating a nuisance, you see, there's different ways about dealing with these things, right? So when you have a derelict vehicle in a public space, that just requires a tag. We can move it within 24 hours and dispose of it.
Mhm.
When a derelict vehicle is on a private property in a neighborhood, now that's a different type of notice now. where you'd have to give an abatement notice. For example, if that vehicle is, they're causing, a nuisance by eyesore, or, it's having rats and all these different things in it, snakes and whatnot, then, that requires a different notice where I'll have to serve an abatement notice. And an abatement notice, it normally gives the person about 28 days to clear up their property, right? And then thereafter, they can also apply for an extension if they've made efforts to try to do some things but haven't got all the necessary funding and resources to get things done. But I can tell you, there are often times when we do offer our community services to members of the public who we know or definitely can't afford certain things. All they're required to do is fill out a community service form, and we will assist them, right, where we can. So, but there are avenues for that. But it's a longer process than a derelict vehicle sitting in a public space.
Please forgive me, but I'm having a little difficulty hearing you. I think I forgot to mention that this is undeveloped private property. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but my concern here is the length of time that I've been trying to get something done about it. And it is a hazard to the community and especially to the properties, directly across from it. And also, I wanted to ask the question, unless I guess the laws could have changed, I wouldn't have to know. I could have slept through quite a few. But I know once upon a time, if you purchase property, you were told, or it was in the mandate, that you had to keep the property cleared. And if not, then you would be fined. And I forget how much it was. Now, I have someone telling me that if you have a piece of property and you want to clear that property, and I'm speaking about private property here, not commercial property, that you have to make an application to planning, pay, and then wait for permission to clear that property. Is that the case?
Yes, as far as I know, that's the case. You have, if you want to engage in land clearing, you have to make application to planning. But I don't want to speak too much on that because that's not my area.
No,
And I don't want to mislead you.
No, I don't
But
mean if
Brenda,
you're doing it as a business. I mean if you
Brenda,
want to have. Yes.
Brenda, if you don't mind, stick a pin because you've just actually raised a hugely important point. We have a whole plethora of laws that actually address litter, but they're not in alignment. And I'm gonna call this out today only because I've been shouting this song now since June 2022.
Well, if you would allow me to just interject, that was the point I wanted to make. Because one law is contradicting the other law, and it doesn't encourage anyone to do the right thing.
I wouldn't say that they're necessarily in contradiction, but I would say that they're not in alignment. And it's difficult to get all of the ministries responsible to be engaged in doing this. And as you know, and that's as far as I will go with shouting out and calling people out, because I don't like embarrassing people, as we know. That's been a fundamental problem that we've had. And like I said, this is from June 2022. Unfortunately now, Richard, I have to run because I haven't.
Caller, thank you so much.
Yeah. And I'm all the very best for the and thanks very much, Sandra, for having us on, Richard.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah, I can't stay on much longer anyway, but because I have another meeting to go.
Okay, so everybody's busy this morning, but let me say this, that maybe Ms.
I can give you another 5 minutes.
Yeah, maybe Ms. Theresa doesn't want to call people out, but somebody has to. And so then the question is, if we, from a legislative perspective, have seen these issues with the different pieces of legislation, why hasn't that been a priority for legislators to fix? I know you can't speak to that, sir, but
no, but I can just say though that this is in the pipeline. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with the legislation to make sure that that at least from the environmental health perspective, that things are done in accordance with the public health law, right? And we're looking at actually creating a separate law for environmental health, which would tidy up a lot of these things for us to enforce. I know that some people are, they would criticize how the enforcement of things are being done around here, but we are following the law, right? The way how the law is written, it sort of gives us the opportunity to warn you a couple of times first before it goes to ultimate prosecution, right? This is where when I mentioned the tagging, what that is sort of a warning notice to you to do something before we take action. When it comes to what an abatement notice is, it's a warning notice to you to take action before we take action, right? So it may seems like we're not doing anything when you don't understand how the application of the law works, and so on. So it's easy to criticize, oh, DH is not doing anything, but we're actually doing something. But because if somebody complies with the notice, for example, then there's no action for us to take, right? And then what you see happen is sometimes they'll comply with the notice, yes, and then you don't see it for a while, and then 6 months later or so they start doing the same thing again, and you say, well, oh, but I reported this matter to DH, they did nothing. But within actual fact, we did something, but it's just that the person either didn't learn anything from that and then start doing it again, and then we have to go through the whole warning process again because it's now a separate action, right? And so when you end up in court from the Department of Environment Health, that we have exhausted all efforts with you, and we've give you enough notices and enough warning for you to end up there. So if you end up in court, there's no excuse, right? Because you cannot say we didn't give you
So
enough.
those are definitely the worst case scenarios because you've given them warnings, you've contacted them. But still, one case in 41 years, I mean, I still find that a hard pill to swallow. But anyway, so are we looking at increasing the fines in any meaningful way?
We've made our recommendations, but at the end of the day, that's up to the legislators to do. Whether they want to increase that or not. I mean, you've heard some people say yes, let's increase fines. Some people say why do it now when people are hurting. But when I say people, you should take care of your space, not because you're hurting mean you should be nasty, right? So just be a good citizen, and regardless of what circumstances you find yourselves in, just take care of your space and respect other space, because you have people who are illegally dumping on other people's property. The owners themselves don't know until we contact them and saying, hey, I'm going to serve you an abatement notice because you are having illegal dumping going on your property, because we have no other choice but to first reach out to the property owner. And some of them are quite surprised when they because they have several properties, haven't visited this particular one in a while, and until we visit them, and then they go, oh wow, I didn't notice, and thank you for bringing my attention. Then they have to pay out of their own pockets now to clean up the property with a situation that they did not create themselves. Right, and so all I'm appealing to and asking members of the public to respect other people's property. Why go out of your way to place a vehicle on somebody else's property to strip it or whatever, and you didn't get no authorizations whatsoever from them to do that, right? It's disrespectful, and we can't allow people to continue to do that. Right. And I'll also say this, that any owner that find themselves in any position where they feel helpless, just reach out to us, and we will find some way to provide some assistance in getting their properties cleaned up for them. So it's not all about, yes, we will take prosecutorial actions if needed, but then we are also willing to work with owners to ensure that we provide a clean space for everyone to enjoy around us.
All right. So let me see here. We have a question here. This person says, question for DEH. My neighborhood is full of yards with abandoned furniture, vehicles, etc. A real nasty and untidy mess, devaluing the neighborhood. What can be done about it, or as these are private yards?
Yeah, again, this is the same thing. You send us you can email us at deh.gov.ky, report those incidents to us. I'll get an environmental officer to go out and investigate these things, and if necessary, this is where we will serve abatement notices on these property owners to clear up the property.
All right, so you can reach out to DEH folks. And you know what? If DEH doesn't know about the problem, then I guess, there's probably little that they can do. Richard Parsons says, is there a way for the property owner to take possession of the vehicles dumped onto their property? Well, normally they're trash and nobody wants them. So I don't know if you want to take possession of trash. But I mean, once it's abandoned on your property, then I mean, legally you have an argument there after it's been abandoned, probably for a certain amount of time. That might be in another piece of legislation. But I think it was Charles that was asking, why would the property owner have to pay if we've already paid this fee when we register a vehicle?
Yeah.
Why does the property owner have to pay another fee for you guys to come and collect it?
And that's again, just to be clear, right? That so that people understand, that fee that they're paying for is the processing fee for that vehicle when it comes to the landfill. That's what that didn't, because you bring it into the island,
the
right?
Initial fee that
You've
we pay
used
at
it.
registration.
The fee that you pay at registration is
Yes.
to use the vehicle on the roads, right? You pay license and inspection fees that allows
No,
you
you
to
said that we
move
pay
about on the roads with the vehicle.
we pay a fee that's related to DEH. What is that fee for?
At vehicle licensing?
A disposal. Didn't you say we pay a disposal fee or something?
No, yeah. When every vehicle that's first enter the country, right? When you go to
Yeah.
customs, you pay the duty,
Mhm.
and you pay what you call an environmental fee, right?
Okay.
That fee, I think that's what a lot of people is confusing, that fee to
Okay.
include the transportation of that vehicle to the landfill. It does not include the fee to transport your vehicle from your residence to the landfill. What that fee that you're paying for is for when the vehicle has reached the end of its useful life. We have to process it at the landfill because the vehicle's coming in.
Mhm.
It has to go out. So that's what you're paying for. We have to bail it, you strip it of all its, the batteries and fluids and all these different things, and bail it, and then ship it off island. Right? That's what you're paying for. That's what
I
that
see.
fee covers. It doesn't cover you calling us and say, "Hey, I'm ready for you to take this to the landfill." So that's $75 that
Okay.
you're paying for
Right.
is for us to come to your residence, transport. Well, you can do it yourself. You can actually, when you have terminated that vehicle at vehicle licensing, you can take it to the landfill yourself. You don't have to call us. You can find whatever means you have, whether it's be by towing it, calling a tow truck, or if none of that is available and you want to call us, then you pay us $75. We come forward for you. But you can do it yourself and save that $75.
Mhm. All right. Someone is asking about the public-private injunctions. What is that all about?
Public-private injunction.
I'm not. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. We'll get some clarification on that. But one of the other things I think that is worth mentioning here as well, Mr. Sims, is when your resources at DEH are diverted to having to pick up all these, you just said you're getting a truck that's specific for that reason now. I don't know how much that truck costs, but I'm sure it's a pretty penny.
Oh, yes.
These are things that impact your budget as a department. You're having to order more equipment, more staffing, and you're less able to, perhaps you can answer this question for me, focus on things like the collection of the regular routine garbage if you're constantly having to divert resources out there to all of these littering jobs and picking stuff up. And wouldn't it be a wonderful world, even from your perspective in your department, if you didn't have to focus so much energy and resources on this problem as well?
Well, yeah, it's a lot to juggle, but at the same time, I do have separate people for separate functions. We have the environmental health section and officers who deal with these sort of derelicts and abatement notices and investigations. Then you have the collection crew who go out there and collect these derelict vehicles and stuff like that, and your household garbage, a different set of people. And unfortunately, I've just been blessed with a few more people that I had on board. So to assist with all of this. So I'm not doing too bad at the moment, but we're busy, yes. And you know, as I mentioned earlier, just got some new trucks coming in. There's another one just arrived last night, so we have equipment coming in. To keep up with all the collection. But what we want to ensure, though, is that people understand what this littering campaign is all about, is that we want everyone to take responsibility for their own litter. And sometimes, I say this time and time again, just to give an example of the challenges that we are faced with, right? When it comes to roadside and litter collection. If you look at what the NRA stats, I'm just going to draw a reference to the Linford Pearson Highway, for example, right? You come down, people say, "Oh, it's so littery and litter everywhere." When you think about what the stats from the NRA, there are 30,000. Think about this for a second. 30,000 vehicles that traverse that highway every single day. 30,000. And if we have 1% of the vehicles that pass that road, 1%, which is 300 people, tossing out something out of their cars, whether it's a can there or a piece of tissue here and there, right? That's 300 vehicles doing that every single day. You can imagine the challenge I have with going behind those people and cleaning up after them, right? So, and it looks terrible because, we would pass there this morning, clean it up, and we'll go by there tomorrow again, and it's as if we never did anything, right? So those are the habits that we want people to change. Listen, discipline yourselves. If you know you just bought something from a fast food restaurant, whatever that may be, wait till you get home before you dispose of your waste, right? Or wait till you get to your workplace or whatever destination you go to, and dispose of your waste. Don't just chuck it out the window and say, and because the next thing, what's going to happen behind that, you're going to hear the public say, well, DH is not picking up the garbage. Well, we need to stop people from throwing it out in the first place, because we're not the ones throwing out the garbage out there every day, but we have the mandate to go and pick it up. But so those are the kind of habits we want people to make sure that they change, and just kind of respect the space, respect the island, and remember the tourism product. It's part of our tourism product, right? So cleanliness is what we market, and we want to make sure that when people actually come here, they see a clean and beautiful island, and first impression, and throughout until when they leave.
All right. So, question from Ms. Brenda. She says, "Is there anywhere on island that containers for plastics can be purchased? Please advise." Do you mean, Ms. Brenda, recycling containers? What kind of containers for plastic? I'm not sure. Maybe some clarification on that.
I mean, I'm sure most of these hardware stores. Yeah, I'm sure they can get different types of receptacles at these hardware stores on island. So, if you look, because there are people who are looking, because for me, I know in my household I have recycled bins in the house, that I use, different plastic containers that they store different stuff. We have cans and plastic and bottles and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm assuming that's what she's alluding to. So.
All right. And she's asking if any of your trucks are equipped for plastic.
Yeah, but remember, we do operate recycling depots, so we collect plastics, and cardboards, and metals at the moment. So we're equipped to transport those things from the depots. But I also want to take the opportunity to encourage people to also use the depots, because in every district there are depots that they can take their recyclables to.
Can you remind us of where those are?
Well, and we have Bordentown by the police station, and then we have Foster's at Countryside. We have an East End right by the playing field. We have a North Side by the Civic Center in North Side. We also have in Georgetown, we have Barcam, Foster's Food Fair, Kirk's on Eastern Avenue, and Cayman Bay. and we also have one in West Bay by the play field in West Bay. So there's enough where people can actually take their recyclables to in one of these locations. I encourage people to do that because we want to let people understand that we are big on recycling. We are doing recycling, and we want to make sure that they play their part as well to participate in this venture with us.
So Mowbray DeCosta says no fines given to cars that litter, no police on the road. So this is now where the community, I think, Mr. Mowbray, needs to come together, because the police can't be all places at all times. DEH can't be all places at all times. But, we all see things, whether it's somebody throwing a cigarette out the window. I mean, recently I witnessed someone throw some plastic, I think it was a plastic bottle, out of the window right in the Savannah area right in front of me. And I have a dash cam on my car. I pulled the dash cam details and sent it to the police. And that's what you got to do. Everybody should start driving around with dash cams. And when you see it, you say something. I mean, the other day I was shocked to see someone, but unfortunately the back camera couldn't really grab the footage in the right way. But this person was driving behind me and I could see them with an open bottle of liquor in 5 o'clock traffic drinking. And we wonder why we have so many accidents on the highway. But folks, as good citizens of this country, there are going to be times when we see something and it's our responsibility to speak up. If you've got derelict, lots in your community and someone who won't, keep their house, their yard or their property tidy, contact DEH, have them issue that abatement order, because I'm telling you from personal experience, they will do it. And the place will get cleaned up. And, you just have to be vigilant and stay on top of it, because it's easy to sit back and do nothing. I know that it requires some degree of work to actually be the change that you'd like to see within your own community. Ms. Brenda says, can you teach your garbage collectors to treat our bins and receptacles with care and respect? That's the least that they can do, not destroying them.
Yes, I've been constantly talking to the team about these kind of complaints, and we are getting better. We've seen where people used to complain how we used to throw down their garbage bin and they blow out in the roads. Now we've actually got the teams actually placing them back in the receptacles where they are receptacles. And so, we're improving. So hopefully she should see some changes in that. Yes.
All right. So we're going to wrap up here. Mr. Sims did say that he does have to go. So just a few more comments. This person says they sent some pictures earlier of an area that I think they said it's the east side of Smith Road prep school parking lot. This has to stop. There are actually people there who are, I'll show you the picture, who are dumping at that location. I can also pin you the location so that you can see exactly where it is, Mr. Sims. But they said simple solution, an impound lot. Cars are towed by government or private contractor and you have to pay to get it back. Is that something that is being recommended or is on the books in any way?
Well, the only law that I know of that has this any sort of impound is under the traffic law, where the commissioner of police can impound vehicles for certain things. But in relation to for us, unfortunately, for when the DH come to collect a vehicle, I can tell it where it's going straight to the landfill.
Because it's more money to maintain an impound lot and to go through all that additional paperwork. Just get straight to the point. Keep your vehicles in order. Keep them on your private property. And if you don't, we're going to dispose of them and you're not going to get your vehicle back. And that's the end of that.
Yeah. Well, that's how the DH operate once we get involved. Because the thing is, when you think about an impound lot, it's easy to say, yes, let's create an impound lot. But then you got to look at, okay, so what are the repercussions of that? We are now going to be having these derelict vehicles harboring roaches and rats and everything else in another area that gives you cause of concern to complain about. Now say, well, it's over infested and all this sort of thing. So we have to be mindful about what the things that we say we want, but then you have to look at the consequences
of that. Yeah. So Ms. Marva says, good morning, all. The government can make changes by simply revising laws. Laws can solve many of these issues. Revised laws start writing tickets in the legal owner's name and fining them. If it is a foreign national that's on a work permit, tickets as such could jeopardize their work permit renewal. If they're Caymanian, unpaid fines will start incurring penalties that could be and not limited to a warrant for your arrest. Until we start holding persons responsible for their actions or lack thereof, then they will. And unfortunately, Miss Marva, he ran out of space in that one. But I mean, we get the idea in terms of enforcement. So Anita says it would be helpful if DEH did a litter pickup before cutting the veggies. They simply cut litter products into multiple pieces, making the situation 10 times worse. So this is when you guys, I guess, but is that DEH that does that cleans up the side of the road? Or is that
no? That's the NRA. The NRA that's responsible for that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that's not DEH.
But I think what some of the things, and that's a valid point. Because sometimes I think we need to coordinate a little better with our partners NRA to see when they're actually going to do those cuts, and then maybe we can do an advanced collection in streets where they're going to cut. So that's something that we can certainly work on for sure. Because I do see the point. It's once it's all minced up, sometimes it makes it a little worse than what it is. But
yeah,
but certainly that is something that we can work on, because that's easy. We can say, look, just tell us where you're going to cut next, and then we'll send our team ahead in advance of that, so that can happen.
Miss Chastain,
anyway, Sandy, I'm gonna jump off.
Real quick, Miss Chastain is asking, do you have to pay for the bins from DEH? I don't know if she means the new ones that you guys are doing down in Prospect, because those you're providing, there's no cost to the community for those, no direct cost, I should say.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a good note to end on this part, because I'm really excited about the wheel bin project that we've just launched in the Prospect area. Yesterday we had our first pickup, and we've had nothing but positive feedback surrounding that. The residents are happy, the team is happy, because it makes their work much easier. In terms of the collection, they didn't have to lift a lot of bins like they were doing before. So reduce and a sort of impact for injuries and so on. But those bins were provided to the residents free of cost to them. Because it's a part of our pilot program. It's a study that we're conducting. So we just want to make sure that people who participated, they didn't have to feel the pinch of trying to participate. So we supplied those bins free of cost to them.
All right, folks. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mr. Sims. Thank you, Miss Theresa. This morning, unfortunately, Parliamentary Secretary Miss Heather Bodden could not come on the program today, but she is part of the committee with Miss Theresa Pitcairn, and they're working hard to hopefully make some meaningful change. So I appreciate it very much. Mr. Sims, always willing to come on the program, and we appreciate that, and we'll continue to do our part.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having me. It was a pleasure
and by the way,
this morning.
one final,
I just want to shout out my.
Wait! Before you say it, we got an important notice here this morning. This person says, please give a shout out to Richard Sims on his 27th wedding anniversary today. So big shout out to you and your wife celebrating 27 years.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry celebrating on Cayman Mall Road. Yeah, I just want to also shout out a big shout out to my staff, right? And the hard working men and women at Department of Environment Health who are out there early mornings while we sleep, taking care of our waste. So big kudos to them as well for all the hard work that they're doing.
Yes. Yeah. Now the pressure's on for Mr. Richard to do something special for the anniversary. Now he's like, oh man, everybody knows.
Yes, and happy anniversary to my wife. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sims.
All right. Yes.
All right, my dear.